Venice, Italy, glowed in the warm light of a late spring afternoon. Alessandro Alex Bellini, a man of impeccable tailoring and quiet authority, sat at a cafe overlooking the Rialto Bridge, the air thick with the scent of espresso and the murmur of Italian voices. He was a man who appreciated the finer things, the artistry of a Murano vase, the complexity of a vintage Barolo, the elegance of a well-executed business deal. As the CEO of Bellini Holdings, a global luxury goods conglomerate, Alex controlled a vast empire built on tradition, innovation, and an unwavering pursuit of excellence. His world was meticulously curated, every detail precisely calibrated. His marriage to Isabella Rossi, a celebrated art historian from a noble Venetian family, was, in his mind, the crowning achievement. They were the golden couple of Venice, their lives a whirlwind of galas, art openings, and sophisticated soirees. But beneath the surface of this gilded existence, cracks had begun to appear. Alex, consumed by his business, had become increasingly distant. Isabella, yearning for connection and intellectual stimulation, felt suffocated by the routine of their life. That afternoon, as Alex reviewed the quarterly earnings reports on his tablet, Isabella arrived, her face a mask of carefully composed emotion. She slid into the ornate wrought-iron chair across from him, the sound of her silk dress a stark contrast to the bustling sounds of the city. "Alessandro," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "we need to talk." Alex glanced up, his brow furrowed. He'd expected a discussion about the upcoming opera season, or perhaps a critique of his latest art acquisition. What he received was a blow that shattered his world. "I am leaving you," she announced, her voice gaining strength. "I am going away with Marco. I am asking you for a divorce." The noise of the Rialto faded, replaced by a deafening silence. Marco. The name resonated with a sickening familiarity. Marco Visconti, a charismatic architect who had been working on a restoration project at their palazzo. Alex had dismissed him as a charming, but ultimately harmless acquaintance. He had been wrong. A wave of disbelief, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal washed over Alex. His perfectly constructed life, his carefully curated image, threatened to crumble before his eyes. "Isabella," he stammered, his voice betraying his shock. "This is unbelievable. What about our life? Our family?" Isabella's expression softened, but her resolve remained firm. "Our life was a gilded cage, Alessandro. I need more. Marco sees me, understands me, in a way you never did. I will not be held captive any longer." With those words, she stood and walked away, disappearing into the labyrinthine streets of Venice, leaving Alex alone with the wreckage of his shattered dreams. The cafe blurred around Alex. He felt as if the very foundations of Venice were shifting beneath him. Isabella, the woman he had adored, the partner he believed he knew intimately, had been living a double life. The revelation was a brutal assault on his ego, his pride, and his carefully constructed sense of self. As he sat there numb and disoriented, the algorithms within his mind began to stir. Alex was not a man to succumb to despair. He was a strategist, a tactician, a master of manipulation. He would not allow Isabella and Marco to destroy his life. He would not be a victim. He reached for his phone, his fingers trembling slightly. He needed to act, and he needed to act decisively. His first call was to Sofia Rizzo, his consigliere, his most trusted advisor. Sofia, a brilliant and fiercely loyal woman, had been with him since the early days of Bellini Holdings. She was his confidant, his protector, his intellectual sparring partner. "Sofia," he said, his voice strained, "I need you to come to me immediately. It is a matter of utmost urgency." Within minutes, Sofia arrived, her sharp eyes assessing the situation with a single glance. She listened intently as Alex recounted Isabella's betrayal, her expression hardening with each word. "Alessandro," she said, her voice firm, "this is unacceptable. We will not allow them to humiliate you. I will assemble a team immediately. We will investigate Marco Visconti and uncover every detail of his life. We will find his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities, and we will use them to our advantage." Alex nodded, a flicker of determination in his eyes. I want everything, Sophia. I want them to regret ever crossing me. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Sophia and her team, a network of discreet investigators and financial analysts, delved into Marco Visconti's background. They discovered a trail of questionable business dealings, mounting debts, and a history of exploiting vulnerable women. Alex, meanwhile, focused on securing his assets. He froze joint accounts, transferred funds to offshore accounts, and consulted with Giovanni Moretti, his family's longtime lawyer, a man whose connections reached into the highest echelons of Venetian society. Giovanni, Alex said, his voice devoid of emotion, I want to ensure that Isabella receives nothing more than what is legally required. I will not allow her to profit from her betrayal. Giovanni, a shrewd and pragmatic lawyer, assured Alex that he would protect his interests with unwavering loyalty. As the investigation into Marco Visconti intensified, Alex discovered a disturbing connection. Marco was deeply involved with a criminal organization known as La Serenissima, a shadowy group that controlled much of Venice's underworld. They were involved in art smuggling, money laundering, and various other illicit activities. Alex realized that he was not just dealing with a romantic rival, but with a dangerous adversary who had powerful and ruthless allies. He knew that he had to tread carefully, lest he become entangled in a web of deceit and violence that could consume him. To combat this threat, Alex reached out to an old acquaintance, Enrico Valentini, a former intelligence officer who had a deep understanding of the criminal underworld. Enrico, a man of few words and deadly skills, agreed to help Alex navigate the treacherous waters of La Serenissima. Alessandro, Enrico warned, his voice low and grave, these are not men to be trifled with. They are ruthless and unforgiving. You must be prepared to do whatever is necessary to protect yourself and your interests. Alex nodded, his resolve hardening. He was prepared to do whatever it took to win this battle, even if it meant venturing into the darkest corners of Venice. As Alex gathered information and assembled his allies, he also began to cultivate an image of wounded dignity. He attended social events, mingled with the elite of Venetian society, and subtly conveyed his heartbreak and disappointment. He painted himself as the wronged husband, the victim of a cruel and unexpected betrayal. His strategy was working. Sympathy poured in from all sides. Friends offered their support, business associates expressed their outrage, and the gossip mills of Venice churned with tales of Isabella's treachery and Marco's duplicity. Alex used this wave of sympathy to his advantage. He leaked carefully curated information to the press, subtly highlighting Marco's criminal connections and Isabella's lavish spending habits. He painted a picture of a gold digger who had been seduced by a dangerous criminal. The public opinion began to turn against Isabella and Marco. They became pariahs, ostracized by Venetian society. Their reputations were in tatters, their lives in disarray. As the pressure mounted, Isabella and Marco began to unravel. Their relationship, built on lust and deception, crumbled under the weight of scrutiny and isolation. Marco, desperate for money, made a series of reckless business decisions that further entangled him with La Serenissima. He found himself in debt to the organization, owing them a substantial sum of money. Alex, through his network of informants, was aware of Marco's predicament. He saw an opportunity to tighten the noose, to push Marco to the brink of desperation. One evening, Alex received an anonymous invitation to a private poker game at a luxurious casino located on a secluded island in the Venetian lagoon. The invitation was accompanied by a cryptic message, an opportunity to settle accounts. Alex knew that this was a trap, but he also knew that he had to accept. He was drawn to the casino like a moth to a flame, driven by a desire to confront Marco face to face. He arrived at the casino, accompanied by Enrico Valentini and a team of discreetly armed bodyguards. The atmosphere inside was thick with smoke and tension. The players were a mix of wealthy businessmen, corrupt politicians, and shadowy figures from the criminal underworld. Alex spotted Marco at a high-stakes poker table, his face pale and drawn. He was surrounded by members of La Serenissima, their eyes cold and menacing. Alex approached the table, his presence causing a ripple of unease. He exchanged a cold glance with Marco, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history and their mutual animosity. "Gentlemen," Alex said, his voice smooth and confident, "may I join your game?" The players hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Then the leader of La Serenissima, a man known only as Il Doge, nodded curtly. "Welcome, Bellini," Il Doge said, his voice gravelly. "Let us see if you have the stomach for high stakes." The game began, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Alex played with a cool, calculated precision, his every move carefully considered. He was not just playing poker, he was playing a game of power, a game of revenge. As the night progressed, Alex systematically dismantled Marco's game. He read his tells, exploited his weaknesses, and gradually stripped him of his money. Marco's desperation grew with each passing hand. Finally, Marco was all in, his entire fortune on the line. Alex raised the bet, forcing Marco to risk everything. Marco hesitated, his face a mask of fear and desperation. He knew that if he lost, he would be ruined, but he also knew that he could not back down. With a trembling hand, he called Alex's raise. The cards were revealed. Alex had a full house, a hand that was virtually unbeatable. Marco had nothing. A collective gasp swept through the room. Marco had lost everything. He was bankrupt, humiliated, and at the mercy of La Serenissima. "It seems, Visconti," Alex said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "that you have run out of luck." Marco stared at Alex, his eyes filled with hatred and despair. He knew that his life was over. As Marco was led away by the members of La Serenissima, Alex turned to Il Doge. "I believe we have some unfinished business," Alex said, his voice dangerously soft. Il Doge sorrise, un'espressione gelidamente vuota. "Indeed, Bellini, it seems that you have become a player in our game." Alex knew that by confronting La Serenissima, he had entered a dangerous game, one that could have deadly consequences. He was no longer just seeking revenge on Isabella and Marco. He was fighting for his survival. He used his wealth and his connections to protect himself and his family. He hired additional security, installed state-of-the-art surveillance systems, and discreetly bribed corrupt officials to look the other way. He also began to gather information about La Serenissima, seeking to understand their operations and their vulnerabilities. He discovered that the organization was deeply involved in a number of illegal activities, including art smuggling, money laundering, and human trafficking. Alex realized that he had the power to expose La Serenissima, to bring them down and dismantle their criminal empire. But he also knew that doing so would put him and his loved ones in grave danger. He weighed the risks and the rewards, torn between his desire for justice and his fear for his safety. In the end, he decided that he could not stand idly by while La Serenissima preyed on the innocent and corrupted the soul of Venice. He would fight back, even if it meant sacrificing everything. He contacted his friend Enrico Valentini and enlisted his help in gathering evidence against La Serenissima. Enrico, with his knowledge of the criminal underworld and his network of contacts, was the perfect ally. Together, they meticulously documented La Serenissima's illegal activities, gathering evidence of their crimes and identifying their key players. As they closed in on La Serenissima, Alex and Enrico became the targets of assassination attempts. They narrowly escaped several close calls, their lives hanging by a thread. Alex knew that he had to act quickly before La Serenissima could eliminate him and his allies. Alex, guided by Sofia and Enrico, orchestrated a meticulously planned raid on La Serenissima's headquarters, a hidden fortress located beneath the canals of Venice. He used his influence to coordinate with the Italian authorities, providing them with the evidence they needed to dismantle the organization. The raid was a success. Dozens of members of La Serenissima were arrested, including Il Doge. The organization's assets were seized and their criminal empire crumbled. Alex had won his battle against La Serenissima, but the victory came at a cost. His life was forever changed. He had seen the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of Venice, and he knew that he could never truly escape it. As the dust settled, Alex turned his attention back to Isabella. He had achieved his revenge, destroying her reputation and her relationship with Marco. But he found that he felt no satisfaction. He realized that his anger and his desire for revenge had consumed him, blinding him to the pain and the hurt that he had caused. He decided to let go of his hatred and his bitterness. He divorced Isabella, granting her a generous settlement. He wanted to move on with his life, to find peace and happiness. In the months that followed, Alex dedicated himself to rebuilding his life. He focused on his business, investing in innovative projects and supporting local artisans. He became a patron of the arts, funding restoration projects and supporting young artists. He also began to explore his own passions, traveling the world, reading voraciously, and immersing himself in new cultures. He discovered a newfound appreciation for life and for the beauty that surrounded him. One evening, as Alex was attending an art opening at a gallery in Venice, he met a woman named Chiara, a talented sculptor with a warm smile and a passion for life. They struck up a conversation, and Alex found himself drawn to her intelligence, her creativity, and her genuine kindness. They began to spend time together, exploring the hidden corners of Venice, sharing their thoughts and dreams. Alex found himself falling in love again, this time with a woman who appreciated him for who he was, not for his wealth or his power. Chiara helped Alex to heal from the wounds of the past, to let go of his anger and his bitterness, and to embrace the future with hope and optimism. Together they built a new life, one filled with love, laughter, and a shared passion for art and beauty. Alex had found his redemption, not in revenge, but in forgiveness and in the power of human connection. The story of Alessandro Bellini is a story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately redemption. It is a story that explores the darkness that can lurk within the human heart and the power of forgiveness to heal even the deepest wounds. It is a story that celebrates the beauty and the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love to triumph over adversity. In the end, Alex realized that the true victory was not in destroying his enemies, but in rebuilding his life and finding happiness in the face of adversity. He emerged from the shadows forever changed, but ultimately stronger and more compassionate.